Are we streaming?
Manelli. Liza. Ha! That's me.
Making people happy. That's what it's about.
All eyes on me.
And if you want to go with me, great. Just let me know.
Kids, where do you hear this?
Making people happy.
All eyes on me.
And if you want to go with me, great.
Kids, where do you hear this? All eyes on me.
Making people happy.
Kids, where do you hear this? All eyes on me.
And if you want to go with me, great.
Kids, where do you hear this? All eyes on me. Manelli. Liza. Ha! That's me. Kids, where do you hear this?
Making people happy. That's what it's about.
All eyes on me.
And if you want to go with me, great. Just let me know.
Kids, where do you hear this?
Hello. Sorry, taking a minute to get started here. My name is Joe. I go by Solutions Joe, or at least that's what my various social media platforms are. And we're going to talk today a little bit about OpenClaw. For anybody who's been paying attention, OpenClaw has been taking the internet by storm for really the last 2 weeks now. So I thought I would do a little live presentation, take some questions, if you have them related to OpenClaw. So let me give you a little background first on myself. My name is Joe, again, solutions architect. I've been in the tech space, tech industry for nearly 30 years. I am a solutions architect by trade. And so that means I know a lot about everything, and I should say I know a lot about lots of different things and not have a deep knowledge per se into any one area. As a consultant, that's kind of the way it goes. You're a jack of all trades, master of none. So we are streaming on multiple platforms, streaming on X, we're streaming on YouTube, and we're streaming on TikTok. So hopefully you can hear me on all the different platforms. If you have questions, comments, drop them into chat. I am going to be changing around the screens a little bit during our conversation here or during the presentation. So you can see some of the screens that I can see in terms of some of the OpenClaw screens, things like GitHub, things like Shodan, which is a security site. We're also going to have a conversation with some of the OpenAI models about OpenClaw to get a deeper understanding of what it is, what it's not, safety concerns, things of this nature. So for those who have dropped some chats or some messages and chats, thank you very much. I see that somebody said hi, so hello. That's looks like the name is Bart. Welcome. Somebody else dropped in a note that says, let's see, somebody's dropped in what looks like a Valentine's note or a Valentine's question, which was related to how to get somebody's attention that you have feelings for. So that's a little bit off of the purpose of the channel in terms of tech, but my recommendation is be the zebra, don't be the elk. It's a simple analogy. It is an analogy that I think is really important in today's world if you are wanting to keep your job, and it also comes more or less from the dating world, and that is those people who stand out or make themselves stand out are more likely to find a connection with others. You don't want to just blend in. Of course, it's got to be in a good way, in a positive way. But in today's world, standing out as a zebra is going to be far better for you in terms of being able to keep your job and potentially maintain your job and avoid layoffs. That's a whole nother topic that I've dove into in a couple different podcasts, and I probably will do another one at some point in time. Anyways, moving on, let's talk about OpenClaw. So what is OpenClaw? First of all, what it's not. So OpenClaw on its own is not AI. So in other words, OpenClaw on its own is not an AI model. It is an orchestration layer or an orchestration program. And that's a very important distinction. So when people are talking about OpenClaw and they're talking about it like AI, okay, it's not AI. So the important thing to understand from a general perspective, whether you have a technical background or not, is what is the difference between AI, okay, and the computer programming that's been going on for 50, 60, 70 years. Well, the key difference is that when we're talking about AI versus traditional programming is all based in rules, okay? And in the most simple sense, what a rule is in a coding world is a comparison of two different variables typically, or values, and then depending on the outcome of that comparison, an execution will occur. And again, going to give you a very simple example because that is what I try to do. I try to give simple examples, try to distill myths, try to make things as easy as possible to understand, whether you have a technical background or not. That is kind of the position I try to take in terms of sharing some information and educating people. So what is an LLM from an AI perspective, right? So what it's not is it's not a rules-based coding or rules-based engine, if you will. So in the simplest sense, what is a rule? Okay, think of it this way. If X equals 1, then do something. And if it doesn't, then don't do that thing. Or if x equals 1, then do something. As an example, print the words hello world. And if it's not equal to 1, print goodbye world. Okay? So in the simplest sense, that is what a rule is. And for really the dawn of programming, that is how coding has worked. It is rules based. Now, of course, it gets a lot more complicated than that simple example. But the point being is, at the end of the day, that is how coding has worked for since its inception. Now, AI models are much different. AI models use something called inference and neural networks. And this combination of neural networks and inferencing, okay, is not rules-based. Nowhere within the underlying model itself, okay, are you going to find a rule like if x equals something, this is what's going to happen. It operates much more on a very complex mathematical type formulas, very similar to how our brain works in terms of how we distill information, process information, and reason out the various outcomes that we should be considering. So because of that, I think it's important to understand that distinction between basic coding or regular coding and what an LLM or AI model does. Now, if you can imagine, since it doesn't have hard and fast rules, when you give an AI model the ability to take on operations or actually perform actions, think of this on your computer, okay? You're giving something that is not hard and fast from a rules-based perspective, but strictly from an inference perspective, a significant amount of power on your computer, okay? And if it makes the right decisions, then great, everything works out just fine. If on the other hand, it doesn't make the right decisions, well, if you've given it literally 100% access to your system, okay, including accounts and emails and things of this nature, then anything is very possible in terms of the outcome. And it may be very negative or perhaps, positive. But that's very concerning. So IBM Technology, which is a channel on YouTube, they just did a fantastic review of OpenClaw. And these are very smart technical engineers. They were pretty horrified at what they were seeing under the hood in terms of OpenClaw, as far as the coding and the lack of guardrails that have been implemented. So my warning to anybody who's listening or listens to this on a recording is really, really simple. Be extremely cautious in terms of installing OpenClaw. Now, if you've heard me use a few different terms here, the reality is when this product, and it's not really a product, it's actually a project, okay, that lives in GitHub. And for those who don't know what GitHub is one of the most popular repositories for code on earth. If you go to github.com, that's github.com, you will go out there and you'll see the repository. Now, companies store their code out there, individual developers and engineers store their code out there. Lots and lots of people store their code in the repository under GitHub. And those repositories can be public, meaning anybody can access them or at least copy the code, or they can be private, in which you can't see any of the code that is in there. So it is basically a library of code. Now, the project was released, and I forget the gentleman's name. He's been making the rounds, doing lots of interviews recently as related to OpenClaw. But the original name of this product was something called ClawdBot. Now, do not confuse that with anything to do with Anthropic, and therein lies the problem. The very first name they came up with for this project was ClawdBot, ClawdBot, okay, not the CLAUDE that is related to Anthropic, okay. So it wasn't very long before the project was released. The name became on fire on the internet. And then, of course, Anthropic asked them politely, which large companies sometimes do, to change the name. right? Because it was way too close to Anthropic's branding, and they didn't want that confusion. And that was very, very smart, because they also don't want to be seen as irresponsible in terms of the code itself. Because again, the code, the way it is written, provides a great deal of access to your systems. In fact, it is almost there's almost no guardrails whatsoever. And again, if you hook that up to your LLM, now you're in a real situation of your LLM being able to have full control on your desktop, so to speak. So it went from OpenClaw, it went from ClawdBot to MoltBot, MoltBot, okay? And then now they finally have changed the name again for the third time to OpenClaw, okay? Now, for me, the word open, if you know anything about OpenAI, kind of concerns me. So I wouldn't be shocked, and again, this is just my personal opinion, not legal advice of any kind to anybody anyhow, that there may be a scenario in which they change it again. Now, this has caught fire on the internet by many, many people, both those who understand technology and many, many people who don't understand technology, okay, that this product or this project people have been deploying onto both their personal machines. Now they've also been deploying it onto Mac Minis, okay, which is an Apple product that you can purchase, which is basically kind of a small little you can think of it as a server. It's kind of a small little server that you can sit on your desktop. And then people have also been deploying this a bit more cautiously, such as the way that I would deploy it, and I do plan to deploy it so that I can explore it some more and actually get into some of the code. So why are people deploying it on the Mac Mini? Well, those people who are deploying it on the Mac Mini are at least smart enough, okay, to understand that there's a high risk of installing this on your personal machine. Because if you install this on your personal machine with no guardrails, then hook it up to an AI model, which is an LLM, okay, you now have given an unbelievable amount of access, unfeathered access to your digital life, okay, which could be very, very devastating. So fast forward, multiple name changes, everybody's running out, buying Mac Minis, installing this. They think it's the greatest thing since, sliced bread. But the reality is, again, at the end of the day, this is not AI. This is an orchestration framework that is using some AI model that you have to provide to it. And therefore, when you provide an AI model to any orchestration layer, guess what happens? You've got tokens going out and you've got tokens coming in. Now, what's a token? You can think of a token kind of like a word, okay? Although larger words may actually constitute multiple tokens, okay? But for our purposes, just think of the output and the input being defined as tokens, okay? Now, when you hook up an orchestration layer that doesn't really have any guardrails, and you're hooking it up to an LLM, and you're going to have to do it through an API. You're going to have to do it through an API call, and that's another topic we can get into another time. But basically, you have to set up that account. You have to set up your security. You have to set up your key and things of this nature in order to make those API calls. Well, guess what? You've now hooked this thing up to an LLM, and unless you, again, put some guardrails on that LLM in terms of the number of tokens you use going out and coming in, vice versa, okay, you are looking at potentially running up a significant what they would refer to as a subscription charge or token charge, okay? Again, bad idea. And if you spend any time on the internet, and X, or formerly Twitter, is a very popular place for software folks and developers and things of this nature, you'll sometimes see, horrible types of postings in terms of very large AI bills that somebody has received because they let their AI model run amok with their orchestration connection and ended up with a very large bill. And I'm talking thousands and thousands of dollars. I see another question coming in chat, and apparently since it is Valentine's Day, happy Valentine's Day to everybody and anybody listening. I do not know why your mother hid the cotton candy in the attic. So it must be something in the air with Valentine's Day. Okay, so what are we going to do in terms of OpenClaw? So the first thing that I think I want to do is to add some context for those who are not necessarily familiar with GitHub. So let's take a quick look at where this project actually lives. And if you give me a second, I'm going to switch around some screens so that I can get some displays going here. Again, we are streaming on multiple platforms. We're streaming on TikTok, YouTube, and X all simultaneously. So what you are seeing here, for anybody who's not familiar with it, this is GitHub. This is the repository, if you will, the most popular repository in the world for storing code. And there's a whole variety of reasons behind that, and it's been around for quite some time. So what you're looking at here is the OpenClaw project, okay? So again, if you have been seeing all this stuff about OpenClaw, ClawdBot, MoltBot, trying to understand what is this, you are actually looking at it right now. This is the code base, okay? Included in this code base is README files and a whole bunch of other things, but this is where it lives, okay? So again, I think we've got a Valentine's theme going on here. Thank you for the hearts. I appreciate it. It does mean a lot. So again, I've got multiple chat messages coming through from all the different platforms. I do see that somebody just mentioned ClawdBot sent my ex-girlfriend feet pics. I wonder. That's from the Tasteful. I wonder if is that true or is that a Valentine's joke. Either way, it is pretty damn funny. But you point out a very real use case, or I should say a very real horrible use case. And that's the point, right? We have digital lives of all kinds, and those digital lives are full of some things that we may not want everybody in the world to see. So if you give a program, an orchestration along with an LLM, unfeathered access to your internet life and your digital life, it's kind of freaky. So I'm real. The product is great. Those are bots. Yes. Hello. I think it's OD. Are you using OpenClaw OD? So if you have questions, comments, feel free to drop them in. So let's move on to, you're about to get started. Okay, so number one, be very, very cautious. Okay, so so you apparently are in the construction industry. So I just saw a posting on X, and again, X is a very popular place for technical talk, mainly because I guess Elon owning it, it became a very popular place. So I would caution you, okay, to either A, work with somebody who knows what they're doing, okay, or B, do some education before you deploy it. And I'm going to give you the reasons why, okay? So the very first thing I'm going to tell you, and I'm also going to show you, we are going to jump over to a website, okay? So that's, my screen should be updating in a second, okay? And by the way, my voice for most people is going to be delayed a bit, okay? So your chats come through in near real time, but my responses are typically delayed because of the streaming, okay? So I'm not ignoring you, but if you can see this screen, this is a cybersecurity website. It's called Shodan. Anybody can create a free account and access it, and if you know how to search it, and of course there's instructions out there, you can get an idea of what's going on from a cybersecurity perspective. We started off with a number up here in the upper left-hand corner. For a few days ago, this was around 18,000. Now, what does that number represent? It represents the number of publicly exposed URL endpoints, okay, for the OpenClaw product or the OpenClaw dashboard. What does that mean? That means anybody on the internet, okay, and here's the information for all the different ways to get there, can go and literally open up your dashboard. Now, if you also made the mistake, which is very common, that you did not change the default login credentials for the installation, you then run into the problem that not only can somebody access it from the internet anywhere in the world, but they are going to, first thing they're going to do is try those default credentials. And if that gets them in, then they now have control of your dashboard. Now, the dashboard itself contains a lot of configuration information, including a lot of connections to your other applications that you may want to use, whether they're emails or, in your case, you're with your construction company. Maybe it's connected to your accounting system or your customer service system or any of these things. And all that information then starts to become exposed. So I would caution you that it's exciting, and it's exciting to automate, especially a lot of the mundane business operations. I get that. The world I work in as a solutions architect, that's kind of what I do all day long. But you got to do it cautiously. You got to make sure that you've got the proper security in place so that you don't accidentally find out that your digital life has been basically fully exposed. Okay, so like I said, about 7 days ago, 8 days ago, the number of exposed URLs was around 18,000. We are now up to nearly 32,000 of these being exposed. And these are in, it's not real time, but it is pretty accurate that we're still looking at 32,000 exposures out there. So that's concerning. So what you can do? Number one is, if you're going to deploy it, do not deploy it in on your personal desktops. In the case of the construction company, do not deploy this on a work computer. Okay, you want to deploy it ideally in what is referred to as a VPS. That's a virtual private server. Okay, and the virtual private servers, they live in VPCs basically, which is virtual private clouds. Now, let me just break that down as simple as I can for you. What's a virtual private cloud? Think of AWS, which is Amazon's web service, or think of Google's cloud, or think of Azure, which is Microsoft's product. There's also a number of other ones out there. The thing is that when you set up a virtual private cloud and then you set up a virtual private server in there, you have now created a gap, okay, is what we call it, between your potential OpenClaw environment and your systems within your business, your computers within your business. And that's very, very important, because you don't want them to have direct access. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, make sure your URL for your dashboard is locked down, so it's only accessible by you. It doesn't need to be accessible by anybody else. So you need to make sure that's locked down in such a way that it's only accessible by you. You can still access it over the internet, but there's ways to be able to filter out anybody else and only allow you into the dashboard access to begin with. And then you also want to make sure that you are changing your default username and passwords and using some secondary authentication or two-factor authentication on that at the very minimum. Okay, that will give you a higher degree of confidence that somebody else is not going to be able to simply get into your system there. The excuse me, Dropbox, Monday, Notion. I'm not sure about Dropbox's services, to be honest. I've never used them. Notion, I think they offer some spin-ups as well. Now, be careful. I did hear that. I think it was Cloudflare was providing basically VPSs, virtual private servers, to spin up the OpenClaw relatively easily. And Cloudflare is security first. Okay, so that would be, if you wanted a more simple, direct route to go, I would definitely look at Cloudflare as a way of deploying it. But again, I just stress that there's lots of opportunities here for exposure of not just getting into your system through the dashboard, as we're talking about, but also because of all the connections that need to be made and the integrations that need to be made to things like emails or accounting systems or phone systems or calendars, or if you're given any kind of access to financial information or credit card information to be able to purchase stuff on its own. Those are where some real concerns come into place. It says, can I deploy it on NVIDIA's Jetson or? That's a good question. I don't know. I'm not going to give you an answer that I don't know. NVIDIA, I think, tends to be a bit more expensive than other platforms because they're really B2B type of scenarios. I would look at, personally, I'm going to look at AWS because they do have a free tier of servers. Although AWS is a bit challenging in the sense that, yes, they're free, but you can't really take them up and down. There is another one out there, I believe, that's called paper something. Let me see if I can find the let me see if I can find the name real quick. I used to use them. Let's see. Paper. No, I can't find them right offhand. Sorry, but there are a number of other services out there that are lower price. The problem for me with AWS is that you can't pause it once you bring up a VPS in AWS, unless they've changed this. If you bring it down, you lose everything. Some of the other hosting services out there or VPCs out there will let you build a server and then charge you for each minute that you're using the server. But on the positive side, you can put that server basically to sleep or put it inactive. Your configuration stays in that server, okay? But you don't get charged anymore for it. And they let you do that for, I think, like maybe up to 30 days. And as long as you come back in every 30 days and spin it back up again, you're able to kind of balance your budget a bit easier that way, and not have to go through that setup over and over and over again. So I would look at that. Let's see. What about a home lab? If you're referring to like using a Mac Mini at home, the problem with that, the problem with the local is it's not really local, okay? Because you're going to have to give it access to the internet. And as soon as you do that, you're connecting to your home network or your business network. And as soon as you connect to a business network, the intelligence of the LLM, along with the skills and the tools that the project has, okay, it can access all your devices on your network. And if it gets really out of hand, it may try to hack into your other devices on your network. So even though those other devices may not be readily available or connected, they could potentially try to do a brute force hack on any of your devices that are on your local network. Again, there just is not a lot of control that is enforceable at this point in time on this type of project. I would definitely recommend, if you're thinking about installing it, IBM's got a great video out there, IBM Technology. Their cybersecurity folks just did a review of OpenClaw, and they were very, very concerned. In fact, I think one of them was going to deploy it and then decided to scrap the whole idea. For me, I do plan to deploy it, but I'm going to deploy it under a VPS, something I can put up And then my plan is this, is I'm going to spin it up. I'm not going to give it access to any of my real accounts of any kind. I'll create a new Gmail account that I've never used for anything, okay, that has no history. And for anything else that I want to make, I may want to test and just kind of experiment with to see, then I will go ahead and I will set up brand new accounts for those things. So it doesn't really have any access to my digital history. And that's the challenge, because just give you a simple example. If you gave it access to your regular email account, right? The problem with that is, like you, like me, like most people, we have probably thousands and thousands and thousands of emails in there, and there's nothing that's going to stop the orchestration and potentially the LLM of searching through all of your history, everything in your inbox, everything in your folders, everything in your deleted. And one of the things that they would potentially find in doing that, especially if it was malicious code that was trying to cause this execution to occur, they would be able to see all the different password resets that you've done over time, right? Like a bank bank password reset. Well, once they determine that, I can see an email came in from, XYZ bank for a password reset into this account, right? Well, I can now go to that bank website, potentially put in your email address and do a reset, right? And have that information sent to me. And now somebody potentially has access to your bank account. Okay, there's a lot of moving parts here, is kind of what I'm saying. And that's why, the software engineers and very smart people, they're like, wait, slow down, take a beat. Let's really understand what this thing is doing and not doing before we're just kind of deploying it without serious consideration. The other thing that I would say, I was going to mention, I forgot. But so in my example here, basically what I've done is I have forked the the OpenClaw code. Okay, so you can see my screens. I originally was on the OpenClaw GitHub repository here, and so what I did is, again, and this makes sense to those who know, I forked it, okay, so that I could get a copy. And at this point in time, since I forked it, which only I was probably maybe 5 days ago, I'm already 1,500 commits behind. Okay, so that's the other thing that people don't really understand if they're not software developers or software engineers. If you download this code and you're running it locally or even in a VPS, okay, and you are not actively keeping up with the code changes, then what's going to happen is you're going to be running an older version of it that is likely less secure than the newer version, okay? And by doing that, you're putting yourself at a great deal of risk, because the software engineer who wrote this, I've watched a few different interviews with him. He seems to be a very smart person, very genuine, okay? Has got good intentions, right? But like any development work, when it comes to software development and software engineering, it's not unusual to have patches. And I've worked in enterprise software for the last 30 years, for multi-billion-dollar companies. We patch all the time, okay? So every, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it might be, we are patching. We're sending out patches to our customers. So getting stuck on something that's static because you're not familiar with that process also is putting yourself at potential security risk. Now, the other thing that I'll tell you, and you can go research this for yourself, is that there have been numerous reports now of malicious code that is in the skills library. So people are starting to pull down skills, okay, from the skills library for OpenClaw. Now, what is the skills library? In essence, it's a small snippet of code that you can download and integrates into the larger project that allows for connections to like email accounts, or maybe you want to be able to do web browsing, or maybe somebody's created a specific skill to interact with like Slack for communications or something of this nature. Okay, so it seems innocent enough, but the problem is this has become such a hot topic. Okay, the hackers know that. The black hats and the hackers out there, they know that. Okay, they also know this is being deployed, unfortunately, by many people who really don't have a strong technical background, because they saw it on the internet. They think it's they think it's the savior to either their business or the digital assistant that they've been looking for, all their lives, basically, right? Well, unfortunately, they prey on that, right? And you download that skill, you deploy it. The most popular malicious code I have heard of, okay, within these skills, not all the skills, but in some of the skills, are actually scanning your systems for digital wallets, right? And why would they do that? Well, it's kind of obvious. They want to steal any digital currency that you might have, whatever flavor of it is, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. This is a common hack that has been going on for quite some time. I can go into a whole nother story of a gentleman who got his cryptocurrency stolen a significant amount because he was using a forked version of VS Code. Okay, and malicious code got in and ended up searching his entire system until it found his crypto, and he lost, I think, maybe a couple $100,000 from it. So anyways, just proceed with caution. So I went ahead and I forked the OpenClaw. That tells me two things. Number one, I have a snapshot of the code, okay, which is great. Now, I am still connected to their code base, which is how my GitHub version knows that I'm literally 1,500 commits behind. And again, simple terms, commits are updates to the code, okay? So I'm 1,500 behind in just a short amount of time. So I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to sync my code on here. I'm not going to bother to do a compare. Okay. So I effectively just synced up with the latest and greatest of the project that's out there. Okay. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to do this is because there are great coding tools out there these days. Claude Code is fantastic, and OpenAI's Codex is fantastic, and I use both of them in the programming that I do. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a code base, a snapshot of the OpenClaw that I had access to, okay? And the reason I wanted to do that is because I want to use Codex, and I want to use Codex to do an analysis on this code to understand what's here, what's good, what's bad, what the concerns might be, okay? And these coding agents are gotten really, really good. Now, why wouldn't I just download this, put it onto my desktop, and run it through my own IDE? And again, IDE stands for Interactive Development Environment. My VS Code, why wouldn't I do that? Because once I do that, then the code is local on my machine. And if I were to either inadvertently execute it, or I was unknowingly downloading additional libraries, right? So depending on how it's built and running any type of agent tools against it, I might inadvertently download some additional libraries that I don't know whether are safe or not. So what I did is I forked it into my own GitHub account. Okay, so I've got a snapshot of it. Now what I did, and I'll show you this, is I'm able to where do we go? Okay, just double check, make sure everybody's got the screens. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the OpenAI's codecs interface. This is the main coding product that they have for OpenAI. Now, what I did here is, and this is actually cloud-based, and that's the important difference here. So why didn't I just bring it down local and run my agents locally within my VS Code? Because I didn't want this code on my personal computer. Okay, I wanted to be able to run it in the cloud safely. So by forking it into my GitHub, right, I have a copy of it. Now I've just updated it, so I've got the latest and greatest code with all the commits, right? Now here in Codex, I can point to my my GitHub account and my specific repos that I have under that, and I'm going to select OpenClaw, which I just did. Okay, the main branch is fine. Again, some of this terminology may or may not be familiar with you guys, and that's fine. I'm not going to explain it all, just because we'd be here all day. If you have questions, you're always welcome to drop them, and I will do my best to give you a quick answer if I can. Okay. So now I basically have a connection, if you will, okay, from my Codex account into my GitHub account, and specifically to the snapshot of the OpenClaw code that I had. So the first thing I'm going to ask it to do is, because I'm very curious about this part, so let's perform an analysis. And let's identify any security concerns. Also provide a high-level overview of what this code does and what it doesn't do. Let's correct my typo. Okay, so we've got our OpenClaw repo chosen, which is forked, right? Got the latest snapshot over there. Main should be fine because it's the only one that I think we have as far as a branch there. And we can run two simultaneous versions here. I think I'm going to change this to one version. And let's go ahead and run it and see what we get. So again, this is the OpenAI's Codex, and it's running this in the cloud. So none of this code is touching my personal computer. The Codex itself is running in the cloud, even though I do have it installed on my local computer as well. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Valentine's Day. If you have any questions or comments, drop them into chat. So hopefully, ODI answered your question about your home lab and on local and why I would not do that. I did see, I don't know if I finished my story, but I did see OD, kind of a similar story of yours on X. Somebody kind of in one industry, and I might have been, I don't think it was construction, but I think it was like plumbing or something. And one was like helping out another plumber to implement this stuff. Again, I just don't think it's going to end very well. I've been in enterprise software for 30 years. I know the importance of security and guardrails. And honestly, it's more, I would say, a concern today or within the world of AI than it is within the other type of coding that I was talking about earlier in this conversation, right? Because this is not rules-based coding. This is an AI. And AI is all about inference. It's all about reasoning. And when it works perfectly, great. But when it doesn't, you can get some very odd behaviors, as well as you can have something called prompt injections, okay? And prompt injections is somebody who's maliciously writing a prompt to try to get the AI model, or specifically the LM, to spit out something that then causes those tools to take some very destructive action on their part. Okay, and that's a real concern as well. So let's see. So right now we're in the process of analyzing the repo for security concerns. You can see right here is where we're getting our updates. And when it's finished, we will get more details. So if you have any questions, comments, drop them into chat there. And I'm happy to try to answer them for you. Give you some context, give you some understanding. Hello, Dan. Goodbye, Dan. Live studio on TikTok. It's a bit interesting. There's a lot of notifications. A lot of things jump around. So we are streaming on multiple platforms: TikTok, YouTube, and X, all simultaneously. So I've got a few things going on, and so I apologize. I have to kind of look around and make sure everything's still running. But if you have questions, comments, drop them, and I will do my best to give you some information. If you have any general AI questions, feel free to drop them. Also, if you want any advice in terms of making yourself what I call a zebra and getting out of the herd of elks specifically within your employment. If you're in a situation where you're working for a company, especially, and you are concerned about layoffs. There were 108,000 layoffs announced in January. Most of those were attributed to AI, meaning AI taking over many of the roles for the layoffs. So if you need any advice or want to talk about that, drop a comment. I'm happy to provide you some insight on what you might be able to do today. And also, actually, IBM Technology also had a really good video that they put out on future-proofing yourself in the job market. It's a very important concept. More so now than anywhere else. So the code base is not very small. I'm sure it's probably actually even larger after all those commits. So this is taking a little while to run. So why this is running, I'm going to flip to another screen. And this one is, so this one, let's go back to here. Okay, so we can take a look at this one. This is OpenAI. Now this is GPT 5.2 deep thinking. And for anybody who's not familiar with AI just in general, if you learn nothing else from this little podcast, okay, learn that all AI models are not the same, okay? They vary greatly in terms of both what they can do for you, but also the amount of reasoning they have, the quality of their output, the accuracy of their output, their hallucinations or lack of hallucinations. So when you talk about AI to anybody, or anybody's talking to you about AI, or you hear about it, by talking heads on TV, wherever it might be, understand that unless somebody's giving you context, okay? And what I mean by context, unless somebody's giving you context and saying, hey, what I'm talking about is OpenAI's GPT 5.2, okay? Or I'm talking about that very first Chat GPT when it came out, the one back in 2 years ago, the 4.0 or the GPT 3 or whatever it was. I used it. It was crazy. It was terrible. It lied to me so many times, right? They are not the same. They are not the same. And that, unfortunately, I think is causing some people to not realize really the impact that AI is going to have on our society, and honestly is already having on our society. The CEO of Anthropic just recently, I'm going to turn some more lights on here. I'm going to try. The CEO of Anthropic just recently, in an interview, kind of stunned me by saying that that they asked him basically, what's your biggest concern, or what's your biggest shocker, if you will, in terms of where you see the AI industry and general sense of where we are with AI and where we're going and stuff. And his response was actually pretty interesting. And he was like, I am still pretty blown away and shocked by the lack of the majority of people, meaning 95% of the general public, that really do not understand where we are at today with AI. He says, it blows my mind. He says, but he acknowledges, right, he lives in a bubble, because that's what he does. I live to some extent in a bubble because technology is what I do. So I get it, and I've had this conversation with so many of my own personal friends and coworkers, and so it is quite interesting how little there is still really understood about where we are at today in terms of the advancements. So let's check in on the analysis. Okay, so the analysis is done. So we're going to jump into the analysis. Let's see what we got going on here. So let me try to pull this over. Okay, so what's actually happened here? Is that Codex is actually created, and we can see the summary over here, and I'm going to read this out so folks can kind of hear me. So after having done the analysis, or the Codex having done the analysis, and let me just refresh everybody's memory on what I asked. So I asked Codex, OpenAI's Codex, I said, perform an analysis of the repo and identify any security concerns. Also provide a high-level overview of what this code does and what it doesn't do, okay? As a reminder, we connected to the OpenClaw code base, okay, the project. So the response as a summary comes back and says, so I added a new repo level analysis document. Basically what it did is it created a document, what we refer to as an MD, markup language, with the details related to the security. So that document captures a high-level architecture overview, explicit trust boundaries, key security concerns, and hardening recommendations based on code and doc inspection plus audit commands. At a high level, OpenClaw is a self-hosted, multi-channel AI gateway control plane that exposes a type WebSocket interface for clients and nodes with one gateway process typically bound to a loop back by default. Security controls present in the code base include runtime guardrails around bind and auth. Auth simply stands for authentication. Combinations and trusted proxy tailscale modes, authentication, verification, with secret safe comparison, and rate limiting. So that rate limiting is a really important concept, right? And that's something I was talking about earlier. If you're connecting this to an AI model, you need to rate limit, because if you don't, you may end up with a very large bill that you're going to be shocked with, okay, for the tokens in and the tokens out. Let's see what else. Verification. Hook. Okay, rate limiting and a hook token handling that rejects query parameter secrets and throttles failed auth attempts. Okay, so they clearly have added more to this project for the purposes of security, although I don't think it's certainly 100%. It says what it does not do. It is not positioned as a perfectly secure managed boundary, stores local transcripts on disk, and treats plugins as trusted in process code, including NPM lifecycle execution risk during the plugin install. So NPM is a package manager for those who are familiar with it. I won't go into details for those who are not. The strongest practical concerns I identified are configuration-dependent exposure risk, especially missing gateway authentication, browser control, and browser control authentication. Tool blast radius if channel gating is loosened, plugin supply chain risk, and local file system confidentiality risk. These are detailed in the review file. Okay, so lots of interesting words there, right? For some of us, for others, probably understood a lot of it. So I'll try to break it down in as simple terms as I can. This is not a perfect situation, right? And one of the key things it's talking about is that you're pulling down other code, okay? And by pulling down this other code, which are also referred to as skills, you are opening your door for risk. And that's one of the bigger concerns. It's one thing to pull down packages from trusted sources and also from libraries that have built-in code review systems or security scans and things of this nature for that code. But it's a whole different story when you're pulling this stuff down from untrusted libraries, okay? So that's pretty interesting. And again, we've got a pretty significant security document that it wrote. So if we look at the hardening actions, and I don't know if I can enlarge this. It's all the way at the bottom here. Let's see. Yeah, let me see. Okay, so if you can see behind my head here a little bit, and I'll move this over. So the hardening actions, let's get this a little bit larger. There we go. So the hardening actions recommendation, set and enforce gateway authentication, okay? So that's a gateway authentication token or authentication password before enabling remote control surfaces. Keep gateway bind, loopback only unless a deliberate authenticated reverse proxy tailscale setup is in place. So that's one thing that I would call out. That aspect of architecture, okay, is fairly complicated. And for most people to install this and have no idea what that means is very, very challenging, right? And put yourself at a great deal of risk. So you can run the OpenClaw security audit deep on every topology, config, change, and address critical warn findings first. So I don't know if that picks up on the library changes or not. Keep DM policy at pairing allow list. See, this is the DM, right? What does DM stand for? Well, in this context, it actually stands for the same thing that it stands for the most part in real life, right? IRL, direct messaging, right? So one of the interesting things about the platform that they chose in terms of this is that they wanted you to be able to interact with it pretty much anywhere in the world, right? Where you could direct message, right? Whether it was a text message or WhatsApp or Discord or one of the other messaging services that supported directly into it. So I see LLM degrader. Can you explain that last one? Which one? Can you give me a little heads up on which one that might be that you were asking about? You don't have to type it all out, just maybe a little snippet, and I can probably figure it out. But that DM aspect is a real concern, and it's come up very early on. Because if you think about it, if your direct messaging into your platform is not secure, meaning only you can send that direct message in, right? And think of a text message as an example. Who can send a text message to a phone number? Anybody in the world, right? Until the person receiving it decides, I don't want text messages anymore from you, and then they block it, right? So direct messaging services, they don't work so much differently than that, right? We've all gotten the spams, right, or the incredible offers for getting rich, that you can't pass up as direct messages, right? So if you have hooked your OpenClaw into one of these platforms and it's exposed, right, and it's receiving these messages, well, number one, unless you have got some guardrails around this thing, it may end up replying back to this unknown person. And if this unknown person is a hacker, they may quickly identify that, we've got something that's opened here that we could potentially exploit. So that is certainly a very real concern, which is why I basically here keep the DM policy at a pairing allow list. What that means is, allow list basically is these are you can configure what we refer to as a whitelist or an allowed list, which basically means this is the only incoming messages, or these are the only senders that incoming messages will be accepted by, basically. All right. But again, you have to think about the platform you're using for communication, whether it supports that, whether it's secure or not, and whether that message is actually getting to the Claude or to the OpenClaw at all, right? Because what you don't want to do is, from a security perspective, you want to try to block things really far upstream if possible, so that they don't cause an overload on your system, because you don't want the LLM to have to say, oh, you're not authenticated, so I'm not going to take a request from you, because if you do that, you're costing yourself tokens for every person or every entity that's trying to hack into you, right? So you have to think some of these things through in terms of the overall architecture. So LLM degrader, if you're still out there, hopefully we answered your question. We've got minimize tool blast radius. So deny high risk tools by default, use allow list, and keep approval prompts on for dangerous operations. I'm not sure how it's would define dangerous operations, and so that's where things become a little gray. What is a dangerous operation, right? So wiping out an entire system, or getting root access to a system and deleting all the files, that would probably consider a dangerous operation. But what about searching for a digital wallet and sending it to me, or along with its keys, right? Let's see. The other one is treat plugins as code execution. Treat plugins as code execution. I got it to respond to TikTok. Hold on. Okay, TikTok, we're still here. Minimize tool blast radios. Okay, treat plugins as code execution. Use explicit allow list, pin versions, and review unpacked plugin code prior to enabling. And this is the one good thing about things like Claude Code and Codex. Okay, you can use those tools, which are very, very smart tools. You can use them for the purposes of reviewing these skills and these code before you actually deploy it within your project. And I would highly recommend it, given where we are at in terms of the early stages of this particular project and stuff, and everybody and their brother trying to roll out. There's plenty of bad actors out there who are trying to get access to your system, guaranteed. Okay, so enforce strict file system permissions. And basically, that looks like the home location of the OpenClaw install, config files, credential stores, and stuff. The idea of that last one is you don't want a request coming in through that direct message that the LLM then processes and basically says, sure, I'm going to send you all my configuration file details, which are going to contain all my credentials and passkeys and or different types of security keys and things of this nature. And that's happened. I've heard of it and seen various postings online. So that in a nutshell is what it is, what it's not. It does not contain an AI model. Okay, you have to hook it up to an LLM. It supports a variety of different ones. I think they're expanding on that, but proceed with caution. Again, I will show you that if we look at the security site for Shodan, we have nearly 32,000 exposed OpenClaw dashboards across the world. More than 9,000, over 9,000 here just in the United States. Okay, and once they have access to your dashboard, if you haven't secured that, it likely they could probably brute force hack into that, and then they're off and running. So, any other questions, comments, thoughts? Feel free to drop them into chat. I'll see if I can answer them for you. Otherwise, I think I'm going to be wrapping things up. Hopefully you found this interesting. Okay, well, if you follow along or subscribe, depending on the platform you're on, I do plan to do an install on this because I'm curious on running it. I will be doing it on a VPS, a virtual private server, so that I can explore what it is, what it's not. I will not be giving it any direct access to any accounts that have any kind of historical information on me. I think that would be a bad idea, at least at this point in time. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Got questions, comments, let me know. Drop them in the comments afterwards. I'll try to get back to you guys on it. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your Valentine's Day. Bye-bye.